Why are we called Negroes? Why are we deaf, dumb, and blind? Why is everybody making progress, yet we seem to be lagging so far behind? Why are we mistreated? Why are we in this condition, stripped of our name, our language, our culture, our God, and our religion? Here in America, all of our religious training has been gotten by the preacher. He has told us of a heaven way up in the sky that we can't enjoy now, but rather after we die. But all of the years that we're living, for us there's nothing but hell, pain, torture, and misgiving.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Lancescurv. We have a different kind of show today, always along the same lines of our existence, empowerment, the things we have to face, spoken in a bold, raw, and uncut manner. I'm like a fireman. You need me, I'm here. You have a story to tell, hit me up, and we're going to do it. We can't wait on a schedule for our empowerment. We can't wait on a schedule to help our brothers and sisters and spread the news about what's going on out here in the world. This is a dire situation. I don't care how many distractions that they have out here for us to titillate us into being dumb and dumbed down. Our destruction is at hand. And as you see in the title, the destruction of the Black family, we have a brother here who's going to share his story. And because of the legalities, we're not going to say any names. We're not going to show any faces. That's just the way it is, because it's hard enough to even try to win in this system. Although at the end of the day, with our resiliency, we're definitely going to win. My brother, your mic is open. I'm glad to finally have you here. We spoke before, and it is a very, very intense situation that you're going through. And I want you to take your time and start from the very beginning, because this is something that people need to hear, because it might be them next. Thank you so much for being here, brother. And welcome you. I'm here with you, but the floor is yours. Take your time.
Thank you, Brother Lance. I'm honored to be on your show. I'm honored to know you as a brother. And
thank you.
I appreciate your taking time out of your life to help me with this situation and this struggle that all of us as Africans, as Black people, need to be aware of, because we are all affected.
Yes.
And it didn't start with me. This has been going on for thousands of years.
Brother, let me interject and say that I'm not taking time out of my day. I'm adding on to our existence, because you are me and I am you. You see what I mean? So it's an honor to serve. There's many who join different militaries and they say, I'm serving my country, but they're not serving their people. By me doing this, it's an honor to serve, because I'm serving my people, and it's an honor to serve you. I won't interrupt anymore. I just had to say that.
Thank you, Brother Lance, and duly noted, and much respect to you, brother, and your family, because where would we be without our families?
Thank you, brother.
So I'm going to start with my life, the beginning of my life, give you some context and background of my life. I'm an African. I was actually born in Jamaica. I'm of Maroon background. I don't know if the listeners know anything about the Maroons, but you can just do a quick search on the Maroon people of Jamaica. They're
Yes.
people that are very, very famous in African history, because our history is a history of revolution, of uprising, of overthrowing the oppressor, the enslaver, the colonizer, the enemy. So yes, I was born in Blue Mountains, Jamaica. Um, both of my parents are African people. So in the Maroon culture, we're very independent people. We're very self-sufficing, and we believe that we should control our destiny as African people. And so that's the culture I come from. In Jamaica, if you do the Google search, as I mentioned, you will see that the Maroon people of Jamaica defeated the most powerful European army to the
Yes.
point that the British, they had to call for a meeting with the Maroons and gave us autonomy on the island of Jamaica. They asked that we not come down anymore and take the slaves back up into the mountains when the British bring them over to Jamaica. And the other
Wow.
side of the agreement is that the British would not come up to our autonomous sovereign land in Blue Mountains of Jamaica. That was the arrangement. There's actually a treaty that was signed between the two opposing armies. So that's where I was born. That's my background in Jamaica. However, my father was a freedom fighter in many senses, in that when Hitler arose in Europe and the Second World War took place, there was a call from the Allies to black men throughout the Caribbean and the Americas and all over the world. And my father answered that call to fight for freedom for African people, him and many other Africans from the island of Jamaica. So my father, he went to North Africa to free Africans in Africa from the boot heel of the Nazis and the Romans, who we now know and call the Italians under Benito Mussolini. So he fought across North Africa under the British commander Montgomery. He fought all the way across Africa to Egypt, fighting the Italians and the Germans. Then they drove the Axis, as they're called, the Germans and the Italians, back east to Libya and Tunisia and these places, Benghazi, these places. And then when they had defeated the Germans and the Italians, the Allies, again, my father was still under the command of the British. They pursued the Germans and the Italians to Sicily. They defeated them in Sicily. They fought them all the way up the boot, as it's called, Monte Cassino, very famous battle, up into Austria. And my father finished in 1945, freeing the Jews from the concentration camps in Germany. And because of the horror, the trauma, as it would be diagnosed today as PTSD, my father returned to Jamaica, a decorated soldier from the Second World War, and to the point he was so honored for his accomplishments in the war, in bringing freedom to the world from Nazism and the other allies of the Nazis, that he was awarded land. He was given land now, and he met my mother, and they began to farm, and I was born on that farm. But as I say, my father had gone through severe trauma freeing the world from Nazism. And so my mother ended up going to her mother, who had left Jamaica because Jamaica was under the British, and my grandmother had gone to England. So my mother went to see her mother, which is my grandmother, when I was born. So I was just born at that time, and we went to England. So I grew up in England, and at a certain point, my mother decided she wanted to come to Canada because she had met a Jamaican that was living in Canada, and he had Canadian citizenship, excuse me, and she brought me with my sister to Canada. That's how I ended up in Canada. So I never left Jamaica of my own will. It's because my mother was taking me as a newborn, as a young child around. So I grew up in Canada from the age of 15, and I spent a lot of time in the USA. I traveled across Canada, and at a very young age, I joined the Canadian military, and that was inspired by my father, because in those years, the only image I had of my father was a picture of him going to the World War II. That was in his uniform. So, you know, as a son of my father, you know, you follow your father usually. And that's what I did. I joined the army, and I served in the army, and I served till I was honorably discharged. And I left the army and I became a musician. I worked for quite a while as a professional musician. Then I was talking with my mother about my life, and she kept suggesting to me, well, you know, because of your military experience and these things, why don't you get another government job? And, you know, she was suggesting the airline, which is the Air Canada. It's called Air Canada, which is the government airline. It was a government airline at that time. It's since been privatized. So I applied for the job. At that time, they weren't taking blacks. But for some reason, they decided to take me. And I know the reason, because I later found out it was because of my military background. They told me that. So I got that government job with Air Canada, and I began to travel. So the first place, as soon as I got my travel privileges, because I was searching to know more about my ancestry as an African. So I decided I'm going to go to Africa. It was ironic because when I started to share with my workmates that I'm going to Africa, they're saying like, why are you going there? It's all flies and people are starving. And this was like 1990. And that was the feedback that I'm getting from them, right? The black co-workers. Because what they would do when they traveled, they would go to Europe, they would go to you know, these Western nations, or they go to some resort, right? They go to some resort. But I wasn't in that frame of mind. My frame of mind is I want to dig deep into my history. And around that time, another thing that had inspired me was that I had seen Minister Louis Farrakhan on the Phil Donahue show one morning on my day off. And I said, you know, I have to find that man. So I did actually find him, and I started to be educated by him. And so I had gone over. So the first trip I went to Africa, I went to Egypt. And this is the time when Egypt wasn't like it is now. It was, okay, so when I say that, I need to explain that. So when I went there at that time in 1990, there was no argument about who built pyramids and who built that civilization. The Arabs, you know, the invaders, they were all clear. They would say, if they saw you as a black man, as an African, they say, yeah, it's your people that built these things. And a lot of the guides that would take you around were Nubians, people from the south. There was no, I mean, it was ongoing. I can't say it didn't exist, but it wasn't like it is now. So everybody was clear. This is the civilization of the Nuba, of the Nubians, and so I started my search, and I actually started to work in archaeology over there. I went on some digs, and I just started to find out incredible things. I went all over from the north down into Abu Simbel at the border of the Aswan High Dam. I was all over the country, because when you go over there, for anybody who's never been there, you will know who you are. There will be no question in your mind about who you are as an African. Because remember, at that time, or those thousands of years when that civilization existed in that area that was renamed Egypt under the Greeks, the situation was that those Africans did not have a border called, this is Egypt, and then below that is Sudan, and on and on and on. Ghana, Nigeria, these names and delineations did not exist. It was one land. And so it was crystal clear to me at that time what they had hidden from us, and the lies that they had told us, because I have an inquiring mind. I have a historian's mind. I have a researcher's mind. I was taught this in school growing up in Europe. They push these things. So as I started to explore more and more and more, because I would go over every year I would go. You have brothers like the ancestor, Dr. Yosef Ben Yakanan, and from him, he produced many people like him, like Ashra Kwesi. They're taking tours all the time over there to show Black people in the hills of North America their truth and who they are, the knowledge of self. And so this went on and on and on until I decided that I need to go to Sudan, because Sudan is what is called Sudan today, is where those people came from. And so I started to endeavor to go to Sudan, and I found a block. Every time I tried to go, I could not get the visa to enter the country. And so I was very persistent. I was not going to give up, because I knew that's where I needed to go. The mind, the spirit, the creator was directing me to go there. And I decided to speak to a brother in the NOI. You probably know him. His name is Minister Akbar Mohammed. And I told him that I wanted to go to Sudan, and I really want to get married. I want to marry from the people of Sudan, the original indigenous people of Sudan. And he was so excited, and he set about immediately to get me the visa to go to Sudan. And he has all those connections, and he arranged for me to get the visa to travel to the country of Sudan. It has since been separated into two countries, as you know. The newest country in Africa is South Sudan. And so I arrived in Sudan, and I'm just going to add something that will make it a bit more clearer why I was so intent to go to Sudan, because I had met people from the fighting in Sudan, the North against the South, here in Canada and in the US. And I made some very great connections. And when I'd been going to Egypt, I connected to a family that is of the family of King Tutu, Queen Tia, this family's bloodline. And so I was intent on meeting these people in Sudan because I had met my future wife's oldest sister, and I found out who they are. Like how it works there, the invaders, they track the indigenous people. So when you apply for your documents when you're born, you have to list your father's names going back, so they know your identity. So I knew the identity as soon as I saw the names. I saw the name Tut or Tutu, right? I saw the name Tia. I saw all the, and on and on and on. So I knew who they were. So I had asked the oldest sister in Egypt if there was a possibility of me going to Sudan and finding a wife, and they were very excited because they had just arrived in Egypt from the fighting, and they said we have lots of women because there's a war going on all these years, so there's like this huge mass of women without husbands because their men have been killed, and so they said yes, but you have to go to Sudan. And so that's why I embarked on trying to get down to Sudan. But also I wanted to know Sudan. I wanted to know the country. I wanted to know the history there. And so I arrived in Sudan, as I had acquired the visa, as I told you. And I immediately proceeded to go to my future wife's family's compound. In Africa, people live in compounds. So I arrived in Khartoum at the airport. I called to their house. They live outside in the country, and I told them I was there. And I got on the bus and I went, and I arrived there. So as soon as I knew my time was limited, because I knew that I had done something very serious as far as Black people or Africans from the West going over there, because I know it's serious because they had roadblocked me all these years, but I had finally made it there by the grace of the Creator and the ancestors. I had made it there. So I knew that they would come after me, because at that time, again, Sudan was not like it is now. It's not westernized the way it is now. They hadn't destroyed the country the way they have now. And so it was a very big anomaly for a Black person like myself from here, the West, to go over there. And so I told them, I want to get married right away when I arrived at the compound, because I'd called my future wife and we had been speaking over the phone for a period of time. And during that time, I'd asked her if she would marry me, and she agreed to marry me over the phone. So when I arrived down there, I immediately proceeded to ask her to marry again in front of her family, and she agreed. And so we began the wedding proceedings, because I knew that they were coming after me. So we had a huge wedding, hundreds of people. They said they would have like triple the amount if we had more time to call the family and friends from all over the country, but we didn't have that kind of time. I knew that. So we married, and right after the wedding, like the following morning, I left to come back to my job. And I came back, and so after that, I immediately began to process my wife to bring her to Canada as my lawful wedded wife. And so I won't get into all the details of the process to bring her over, but she arrived in Canada. There's something I should mention, right? So in Sudan, culture or indigenous African culture, as a man, you cannot go with the woman by yourself. You have to be chaperoned. You have to be chaperoned. So when I arrived down there, I spent no time alone with my wife. I was always in the compound with her. If we went out, probably one of her brothers would go with us. And so we were always in the company of somebody, because you have to protect the woman's reputation. Her lobola or dowry or whatever you want to call it, that is also tied to her being a virgin. Put it straight, right? So that is very key in the culture. I mean, it's changing now because it's becoming more and more westernized. They accept the culture of the West and they're following that. But I'm saying at that time and where I was, that's the way it was. So anyway, we began the process of bringing her here, and she arrived. I had taken her to her sister as she asked me to, because I'd gone back over. And so because the embassy for Canada they don't have one in Sudan, so the closest one is in Cairo, and that's where we processed her paperwork through. And I'd stayed there for a while, hoping that she would get the finalized papers so she could come back with me, but that didn't work out. And another thing that happened was during the time that I spent there, she became pregnant. So we stayed in her oldest sister's home with their family, the husband, her sister, and their children. And so I came back by myself. So eventually, after a little while, she was able to travel. And so we lived here for almost 15 years as husband and wife. We have 5 children. The oldest one, all the children are homeschooled. The oldest one is now 19. She received full scholarship to the university of her choice. She is a DNA, or she's in the study or in the process of becoming a DNA scientist. That's her field. She received scholarship from homeschooling into top university as a DNA scientist student. So for all those who think, well, you have to go to school in the system to become somebody to get your degrees, no. I'm telling you, I'm bearing witness that it doesn't go that way. That's a falsehood. We as Africans educated each other and our children for thousands and thousands of years. We didn't have to go and get an education from Westerners. We did it ourselves. So me and my wife, we homeschool our children. And the way it looks right now, because yes, so sorry about that. So I'm not going to be able to stay long. Maybe we can do a continuation of this because of the time.
Of course, brother.
So I'm going to go on a bit more. So yeah, where I was going is that I just want to put that in our people's mind, because many of us, especially on the continent, are locked into this mindset that we need to be educated by the Westerners, because they constantly degrade us, dehumanize us, denigrate us, make us think that we're worthless, that we're nothing. But we are the people who developed civilization. I'm a witness bearer of that. So I just wanted to make that very critically important point. You imagine you have a child. She has never been under any education other than her mother and father. And that child can go from birth into a full scholarship to the university of her choice and enter the field of DNA science. So I think it's pretty clear. So going forward, we lived in our farm. We did organic farming. We had livestock because that's what my wife wanted. She wanted to live how she lived back home with her family, under her mother and father and her siblings. And so I had been living in the city, but when she told me that, I wanted to please her and what she wanted. And I thought it was a good idea. So we moved out in the country and we farmed. And most of our life together as husband and wife was out farming. And we were very successful. But the way the farming or agriculture works in the rural area here, and I'm sure this will resonate with people from USA, Black people from USA, is you are not allowed to do that. There's like an unwritten law, or maybe there's a written law that Blacks are not allowed to do that. The only way here in Canada that you're allowed to do that is as a farm worker or a seasonal worker that they bring from the Caribbean, from South America. They bring you into plant, and then when they finish harvesting, they throw you back to where they brought you from. And these brothers and sisters are put in slave conditions. They don't have any insurance. If something happens, that's it. They're on their own. Many of them are killed. They don't have any sort of coverage. So they're slave labor. And that's the way the system is. I know this because I would meet these brothers all the time. As I said, I worked in the airport, so I would see them flood the airport when they bring them in, and then they flood the airport when they ship them back. So one day, okay, let me just reframe that. So in 31st of March, 2018, after I had been taking my wife for upgrading, because she had said to me that she wanted to get into the medical field, because remember, we're sending our children also into the medical field. So she wanted to enter into the medical field. So I said, okay, that's great. You want to enter into the medical field. She said there's a place in the city that she wants to go there and speak to them and see how she can enter into the university in the medical field. So I took her. We went there, we saw the people at this, it's called, it's a learning center place where they do upgrading. And they assessed her at a grade 8 education from Africa. My wife is very intelligent, but she doesn't know, because she's from deep Sudan, the heart of Africa, she doesn't know much about the West. So of course, they're not going to approve her for entry into some college or university with whatever education credentials she brings. So they assessed her at grade 8, and they said in order for her to enter into the medical field, she would have to do upgrading. So we began the upgrading at home, and one day she said to me she needs to go to the upgrading place, the learning center, and I went there and I met a woman. So we had our 2 youngest children with us, and my wife is telling me this is her new teacher. So this new teacher turns to me and says, who's looking after these 2 children? And that was a red flag to me. The woman, she's not even introducing herself. She's just looking at my children and asking me who's looking after these 2 children. So that was a red flag. So shortly after that, on a Saturday morning, I wake up and the police are parked at the end of the driveway. Like I say, we live in a farm. It's out in the country, rural area. And I turned to my wife. I said, what's going on? I see 2 police parked down at the mailbox at the end of the driveway. Did you call them here? She said, no, I didn't call anybody here. So I said, you know what, let me go outside and talk to them, because they're looking in here. Something very strange is going on. I put on my coat because it was, as I say, March. And I walked out of the farmhouse. And as I go out, I see this same woman that had looked at me and said, who's looking after these 2 children? So I asked her, what is going on here? Like, what are you doing here? What is this? So she wouldn't answer my questions. She proceeds to go to the house. So she walks past me to go and speak with my wife. So I continue walking toward the police. And as a military person, I know when something is very wrong. People are hiding behind a car, like in a prone position, like they're ready to shoot or something. I recognize that automatically as I'm walking toward them. They're crouching behind their car. And I go up to one of them. I say, well, what is this? What is going on here? Did somebody call you here? Like, why are you looking into our house like that? Why are you positioned here like this? They told me that teacher, she called us here. So as a black man who is very aware of the danger that black men live under in the hills of North America, I was not about to be murdered. And then the story is that a madman came out of the farmhouse and he was armed and aggressive and he rushed at us. So we feared for our life and killed him. You know, the narrative. So I went back in the house and I called 911. And when I called, I guess they realized it was me, or they were expecting my call. Maybe the operator, the 911 operator, hung up the phone on me when I started to explain that this is looks like some sort of criminal action going on. I'm asking them, like, what is this? They're not giving me a suitable explanation of what's going on. So when they hang up the phone on me, I now realize that I'm in danger. And I go outside where the police are, but I go off to the side. So they would have to come and approach me. And I'm going to watch now what this is all about. So I'm standing there observing, and then I see my children, the older ones, start coming out, and they're bringing bags and loading them into the teacher's car. She's driven her car up onto the property next to the door of the farmhouse, and she's getting my children to load bags into her car, her small car. So they do this, and then I guess when they've loaded whatever they want to load, and the teacher is constantly talking to the police, the two police that are there. They're directing the operation, right? They're telling her what to do. Because one of the things was my wife didn't want to come out of the house. She didn't want to leave the house. So what that tells me is that this was an abduction. She already told me she didn't call any police there. And she did not want to leave the house. But the woman who was the teacher kept going to the police and getting instructions from the police what to do. So I continued to observe. And I have 5 children. I think I mentioned that. So 4 of the children are girls and there's 1 boy. So they got the 4 girls and put them in the car. There's only seating for 5 people in that car. So you've got 4 girls. The youngest one requires a baby seat. There's no baby seat. They didn't take the baby seat out of my vehicle. And they load the girls in the car, and there's my wife and this teacher. And they drive off and they stop a little way down the road, and my wife gets out and walks back to where I am, and the police officers have approached me, and my wife comes up and whispers to me that my son is still in the house. So when I hear he's in the house, I'm right away go to check what's going on with him, you know, if he's okay, is he there, what's going on. So I leave the police and my wife there, standing there, and I go in the house, and he's there. So a week after that, I'm there in the house with my son. I called, or my wife had been contacting me by the internet, and she called, and my son spoke to his sisters, and you know, they talked. And the following Saturday, I had to go on a business trip. And I didn't want to take my son with me because he was only 6 years old. I had to get up like really early. I had to get up at 2 a.m. and get ready and be on a long drive and get to where I had to get to very early in the morning. So I didn't want to do that with him. I didn't want him to lose his sleep and all that. So I called my wife, or I think I texted her, emailed her or something on the internet and said that I need her to take him. And she said, let me call you back. So I waited, and she called me back and said, meet her down the road at the gas station, and she would take him at that drop-off or meeting point. So I woke up my son, start getting him ready, put on his winter gear. I went out to the truck. We had a pickup truck, and I turned on the engine, turned on the heat, warm up the vehicle. And after that, I came back in, grabbed my son, and I'm holding him and go out through the door. As I go out through the door, I see police coming from every direction. They have the farmhouse surrounded. They have their utility vehicles, that they have their equipment, their explosives, their heavy weaponry, and they're in full Kevlar. They're coming from every.
Brother, I think your sound is out. I don't know if you can hear me, brother, but I'm not hearing your sound.
Brother Lance?
Oh, I can hear you now.
Okay, so listen to this, brother. As I was explaining before, I won't be able to get into everything right now. We're going to have to do a continuation because I haven't really gotten into the real heavy stuff. I'm getting there right now. So can we continue this? Maybe whenever is appropriate for you, we can work out a time and I can continue.
Sure. If I have a show with Dr. Ade tomorrow at 3 o'clock, or actually, 3 o'clock East Coast time. I believe it's around that time. I know we have a couple hours between us, as I'm 5 hours away from East Coast time right now, because of daylight savings time. So we can do it tomorrow anytime that you want. I do have a few runs I have to make out early, but for me early is if I go out at 9, it's 4 o'clock East Coast time. So we can do it relatively early. We continue, or whatever day is good for you. But tomorrow
early is good for me. That sounds
good. Tomorrow will be good because now you got everybody on the edge of their seat now, and they want to hear more. So to wait a week, it wouldn't be right.
Okay, brother Lance. All right, sounds like a plan to me.
Definitely. Yes, so for everybody listening, we're going to do it tomorrow. I'll use the same banner and put a big 2 on it, so you know that this is part 2 of the same situation. So, brother, thank you so much for sharing. You told me the rest of the story, and if you're listening to this now and you think this is something, you ought to hear the rest of this. So do your thing, and just we'll communicate tomorrow, and we'll do it impromptu like we did now. You know what I mean? You call me, I'm home. Perfect. We go live. All right.
And I'm gonna have one of my witnesses, as you know her, Sister Yulisa. I want her to also testify because she has witnessed some of what I'm going to explain to you tomorrow.
Yes. For sure.
Yes. All right, my brother. I'm honored, and I'm very happy that I'm now able to get my story out, globally, because all Africans need to be aware of what is being done to African families.
Yes. Exactly.
May the
Thank you so much.
Continue to bless you, brother.
Thank you. I appreciate it. All right. Take care. Just call me.
All right, brother, for sure.
All right. Okay, peace.
Peace out.
Thank you. Well, you heard it, family. Tomorrow, we can't ascertain the time right now because they're traveling and stuff. It will be tomorrow, and I would say maybe like about 11 to 12, maybe East Coast time. I'll talk with him and we'll make it, because sometimes it's best to just put these stories out. After I finish the first stream, I went to take a little nap for 15 minutes because I was going to come back with something else, and I had a few things to do around the house. And I got the call, and they said, "Hey, can we do it now?" I said, "No problem." I've learned to have a sense of urgency because sometimes opportunities are missed because of things beyond your control and things that are just timed wrong, and you don't want that. Anytime I have something to do and it's in front of me and I'm home, we're going to do it. I don't waste time, you know? So there's no middleman or anybody you have to call when you want to do a show. Just hit me up. If I'm free, I don't care what I'm doing. If I'm free, if I'm home, we can do it, no matter what I'm doing. So that being said, I'm just glad you all came here. Don't forget, it will be tomorrow. We don't know the time, but it will be probably before Dr. Ade's show. And I'll probably do something even before that. So we probably have 3 shows coming, and maybe I'll do something in a little while. I do have a few things to do, but the night is still young. Even though it's 2 minutes to 8 for me, still I'll be up for a little while. And I know there's something that's going to run across my screen, my desk, or my phone that I got to talk about. All right. Thank you all so much, and thank you for your support, and share these stories because these are the real deal. Nothing manufactured. It's organic, from the heart and from the hip. Thank you so much. Much love. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.